Is every debt that you have worth paying off? The short answer is no. I have had millions of dollars in debt from a young age, and I just keep piling on more and more. I'll tell you why. Look, what happens to your net worth when you pay down one of your debts? Nothing. It stays the same. Let's unpack this together and learn how you can use debt as leverage and be a more savvy investor for the rest of your life. Settle in and stick around for the entire video so that I can give you a complete answer by the end. You're probably going to have some jaw-dropping surprises along the way today. Hi, I'm Keith Weinhold, Get Rich Education founder, Forbes Real Estate Council member, best-selling author, and longtime real estate investor. All right, say that the total value of all of your assets gives you a sum of $1.5 million. That's the combined value of your real estate, car, retirement account, gold, Bitcoin, all of it, anything of value, $1.5 million, your asset column. And totaling up all of your debts equals a $500,000. That's mortgages, automobile debt, credit card debt, everything. Your liability column. All right, you've got $1.5 million in assets and $500K in debt, so a $1 million net worth. Next, say that you decide to pay down $100K of your debt and you choose to use it on mortgage debt. Well, there, now you've got $1.4 million in assets and $400K in debt. Well, the result, your net worth is still exactly $1 million. You've now got fewer assets and less debt. You just broke even, numbers-wise, but it could be worse than a break even. Because what if, say, a year after your mortgage pay down, you lose your job? Now you need that $100K back to make minimum monthly mortgage payments or for living expenses, and you can no longer get it back and no one will loan you funds since you don't have a job. Or you can still be denied a loan even if you have your job and home equity and a great credit score, but lending standards tighten and change. Yeah, that happened in 2008. Well, then I guess you'd have to sell the house, but who could you sell to? Because others probably cannot get loans in that environment either. Again, I saw it happen in 2008 too. I was a real estate investor then. So debt paydown isn't just a question of net worth, it's liquidity, and there are some more important layers that we're going to get into. Some like to pay down debt because it feels like one less obligation, but it also means that you have fewer funds available that can generate a yield, so it's one less return source too. Paying down mortgage debt builds home equity. That is usually a bad thing because, as I'm known for saying, home equity is unsafe, illiquid, and its rate of return is always zero. Yeah, see, this is because property values go up or down regardless of how much equity you have in the home. Say you've got a $500K home with $100K of equity in it. Well, if the real estate market goes up, it had nothing to do with your equity position. And conversely, if the market goes down 20%, your equity is the first thing to go. All 100K is gone. And do you know the crowd that sometimes never learns this? It is seniors, retirees. They never learned. And what happens when a person is older and has had a paid off home for a while? People get a reverse mortgage. A reverse mortgage means that your home makes payments back to you, but reverse mortgages have high fees, and also you can't even get nearly all of your equity out. You'll only get up to 60 to 65% loan to value, meaning that 35 to 40% of that hard-earned equity that you worked decades for got trapped, and many never get a hold of it. And now, for all the years that your home is paid off, and for some, that condition begins as early as their 30s, your equity wasn't earning any rate of return either. And the earlier one learns that the ROI from home equity is always zero, the better. But now, you didn't see a bill for this loss. You just never saw the gain that you should have had And that's part of the reason why this myth that home equity is such a great thing perpetuates and carries on for generations. There are fewer reasons to have a paid off home in today's world. I mean, first of all, today, a bank cannot call your loan due in full at any time like they could a century ago. Secondly, interest rates are not in the teens like they were a couple generations ago. And then thirdly, there are more likely 2 people working in a household generating an income, not 1. And some say, well, you better pay off the home by the time you're retired, though. Well, maybe. If you're an investor, your income could be higher when you're retired. Your job should fade away as your investment income increases and trumps your job income with your cash flowing assets like from rental property or from dividend paying stocks. And even if you pay off your mortgage, a lot of times you aren't going to feel like you won, because you'll still have a housing payment that could be even larger than your mortgage payment was when you add up property tax, insurance, maintenance, utilities, repairs, and perhaps HOA dues. A paid-off home is a target for lawsuits. Plaintiff attorneys do research and often see that it is low-hanging fruit. Now, what about interest rates? All right, if that $100K that you paid down in our first example, if that was for credit card debt, then that was probably a good thing. 60 to 70% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. They think debt is bad because it threatens them. They're precarious. Bankrate tells us that fully 50% of American credit card holders carry debt month to month. And I'm going to guess that for you, the GRE viewer, that it's even less likely than that you carry monthly credit card debt where that balance carries over and you'd be subject to credit card finance charges. And the average credit card interest rate in America is near 25% today, and it's unsecured debt, meaning there's no collateral tied to it, and it's not tax deductible either. Now, yes, you could beat a 25% return if you're in leveraged real estate. That might make you think that you could keep your credit card debt around, but your real estate isn't liquid, and the liquid cash flow drain on your credit cards is pretty drastic. And the other problems with credit cards is that you have to pay your own debt. Later I'll talk about debt types where others pay your debt for you. And if you have decided that you've got some debts worth paying down because its interest rate is too high, please pay the one with the highest rate first so that you lose less to interest. I know there's a school of thought that says pay the debt with the lowest balance first. That's nonsense. Now, sometimes if you know specifically what you're doing with credit cards, you can play some little games. I did. After I finished college, I kept transferring credit card balances with these 0% introductory APR offers from one card to another before the introductory rate expired, and I kept track of all that. But this isn't any sort of long-term wealth building strategy, and higher credit card balance transfer fees keep weighing that shoestring strategy down. When it comes to interest rates, it's about that arbitrage. And ask yourself really 2 questions when it comes to arbitrage. And arbitrage is just a fancy way of saying making a profit on the spread. We'll look at an example, but first ask yourself, how good of an investor are you? What % return can you reliably earn from investments? What do you think? You might say 15%. All right, well then if you're plus 15 on your investment, but your interest rate on your debt is 8, then you've got 7 points of arbitrage or profit. Congratulations. And second, on arbitrage plays, ask yourself, can I afford the cash flow, the monthly payment, because you've got to service the debt? If your 15% return, just say that's all tied up in the appreciation of a property, well, that's not very liquid. So you're going to need to have the free cash to make the payments on your 8% interest rate loan. Let's talk about other times not to pay down your debt. Say you're trying to build up an emergency fund of at least 3 to 6 months, or you want to contribute up to your employer match in your company's retirement plan. You may very well want to fund those things before you pay down debt too. Now, some say, hey, just forget all these numbers like rates of return or sophisticated sounding words like arbitrage. Debt just makes me feel anxiety, stress, sleeplessness, and like I've got a weight on my shoulders, so let me just get it paid off, or I'll be afraid that if I don't and I've got some money, if I don't put that toward the debt, I'll just lose all the money to something fleeting like sports gambling. And to that I say, come on. We're adults. Set some boundaries. Dog-ear some cash for entertainment and hold a firm line. Learn how to use debt to your advantage. Debt is like fire. It can burn you if you don't know how to use it, and it can heat your home if you do. And if debt gives you sleeplessness, in fact, here, this will help you sleep. Take solace in the fact that your debt is being eroded away as you sleep. Yeah, every single one of your debts is being debased by inflation right now. Even as you watch me, your principal debt balance is passively eroding due to inflation. With your, say, $500K of total debt back on your balance sheet, 10% inflation over a couple years erodes its weight down to $450K without you having to get involved or make any paydowns at all. And that's because incomes spiral 10% higher. Wages, prices, rents, salaries, all indexed to inflation. It gets easier to pay back those principal balances. The bank doesn't ask to be repaid in inflation-adjusted debt. Debt is the most powerful wealth-building force that I know of because debt is leverage. With 20% down payments, debt allows you to own and control 5 times as many properties as you could if they were all paid off. I mean, would you rather have $200K worth of property paid off or own 5 $200K properties, each with 80% loans? Well, likely the 5 mortgage properties and the $200K of equity in those, because that's $1 million worth of property to appreciate over time rather than just $200K worth in one property paid off. And you might think, yeah, but what about all of the interest payments on those 5 loans? Well, one attribute of real estate debt is that as you get properties where the rent income meets the expenses, congratulations, you have reliably outsourced all of your debt payments to tenants. Yeah, the tenant pays all of your mortgage interest and your principal, property tax, insurance, and all of the other operating expenses. And hopefully a little on top of that called cash flow. Earlier, I had talked about how I had millions in debt from a young age. See, most of my debt, personally, it isn't really going to be paid back by me, it's my tenants. It's another reason to keep debt in place and only make the minimum payment. I could retire the debt if I wanted to, but I'd lose the rent income, the leverage, and the inflation profiting benefits on the debt. Yeah, let me explain inflation profiting a little more just quickly. If you've got $10 million worth of savings under the mattress and 3% annual inflation, you're losing $300K each year in purchasing power. Oppositely, if you get $10 billion in income property debt and 3% inflation debases your debt then by $300,000 per year, that increases your net worth by $300K per year, even if the properties don't appreciate one bit. Let's talk about another reason to pay down your debt. When a payoff or pay down does make sense, even if it's at a low interest rate, it's when an outside force kind of makes you pay down your debt. Say that you're trying to buy a property, whether that's a primary residence or a rental property, and that you've got, for example, $11,000 left to pay on a car loan at a 5% interest rate. Well, even though, say, you aren't outsourcing your payments by renting it out to a car share service like Turo, all right, well, you've got to pay your own debt, but gosh, that is a nice low 5% interest rate that you'd be wise to keep in place in most cases because you're confident you can beat that and earn more elsewhere. You'd rather enjoy that positive arbitrage rather than pay off that 5% car loan. And yeah, I'd feel the same way, but your mortgage loan officer says you've got to pay off the $11K car loan down to zero because your life's DTI, your debt to income ratio, is too high. You've got a maximum threshold on that when you qualify for a mortgage loan. So if you want the mortgage, the big loan amount, you got to pay off the car loan, the little loan amount. Well, that's a case where it makes sense to pay off that car loan debt then. And also when it comes to your credit score, you might need to improve it to qualify for another loan or another reason. And 30% of your FICO score is made up of your amount owed, and that can be another reason to pay down debt. I'm answering a vital question for you today, and that is every one of your debts worth paying off? I'm sharing information, perspective, and experience with you here, and this experience was built just like all experience is, and I didn't always have experience. Of course, a mistake I made is that I used to get 15-year loans for properties instead of 30 because I figured that way I could pay less in interest over the life of the loan. But then I learned that 30s are better because if you reinvest the difference from the 30s lower payment, you'll almost certainly make more than you would lose to the additional interest paid over time. Another mistake I made was with college loans. Now, my parents and I split my college costs 50-50, and I still had student loan debt for a few years after graduating, and I really can't remember what my student loan interest rates were, maybe 6% blended. I had a few different student loans, some of which I transferred onto those 0% introductory APR credit cards, by the way. But after my student loans were paid off, I thought that was some sort of victory, and then I started investing in real estate and understanding terms like leverage and arbitrage. By then, I kind of wondered if it would be desirable to have those student loans back. Rather than paying them off, I could have owned another property or two sooner, and I'll never know the opportunity cost of not benefiting from the returns on more property sooner. You can't see what you didn't get. And of course, student loan debt is one of the few debt types that cannot be written off in bankruptcy. That tilts back a little toward paying them off sooner rather than later as well. Debt is often good when it helps you buy a cash flowing asset or create arbitrage, and it can even be good when there's a non-monetary benefit, when it helps you create memories, when debt helps you buy a home for your family and have a sense of permanency if that's important to you, and a mantle to place baseballs on and hang Christmas stockings from, or even to fund a Disney vacation, or who can put a price on that? So it could be good or bad to use debt for those touchy-feely things. But no matter, every single one of us either uses debt or forgoes the opportunity to use debt, meaning that we're now subject to an opportunity cost from what our funds could have earned. And this is why a central and enduring mantra here at GRE is that financially free beats debt free. Financially free means you have enough residual income streams to meet all of your expenses and just live how you want to live, even if that's funded with tenant rents from mortgaged income properties. Debt free means that you don't owe anyone anything. But if you put debt free before financially free, you're often going to grind and live below your means and work overtime and eat dirt and miss opportunities for decades. Financial freedom is achieved by successfully converting your equity into cash flow, but paying down a mortgage does the opposite. It converts cash flow into illiquid, zero return equity. What you've heard me discuss is a message that hundreds of millions of people need to hear. So to give you a summary answer to our question, is every debt worth paying off? The answer is no, and the key considerations for you are liquidity, interest rate, arbitrage, creditworthiness, your ability to outsource the debt, and also your confidence in your ability to earn in your lifetime. I mean, mine has always seemed high, so consider that as you evaluate your personal circumstances. Now, I never plan to pay off the home that I live in. In fact, when equity accumulates, I refinance, create a second mortgage, and pull out as much money as I can. This is a tax-free windfall event too. If equity isn't harvested, it rots in the field. Learn more about why I never plan to pay off my home right here.